We don't enter high-performance Rambler V8s in racing because the only race Rambler cares about is the human race. That was AMC's big advertising campaign for 1964. And at the time, all of the automakers were completely into the racing scene. General Motors, Ford, Chrysler, Superstock, NASCAR, every type of racing you can imagine. You know, the whole win on Sunday, sell on Monday thing, they were all about it. But AMC didn't get involved. AMC was the smallest of the manufacturers. It actually still had teething pains. It really hadn't established itself yet. But they made this stance right there in 1964 that they weren't going to get involved in all of that silliness. But those were words that they were going to eat hardcore in just a few years. Now, I don't want to talk about all of the evolution of the American Motors muscle car, because there's so many twists and turns in it all. But I do want to talk about one car in particular that I consider to be the only true hot rod built during the muscle car era. Now, I know that sounds a little controversial, right? It sounds a little crazy. What's the only true hot rod? Because now you have to go back to this era, and you have the most insane machinery. I mean, you've got your Max Wedges and your Hemis. You get your Swiss cheese cats. You got your Ford Thunderbolts. You got all of these cars that were just, hardcore. Oh, by the way, this is Winnie. Winnie is the reason we haven't been making videos very much in the last couple of few days. She's a 6 weeks old border collie, and she's beautiful and she's brilliant. She's already potty trained. She's only been here for 2 days. She's already potty trained, and you're going to be seeing a lot of her on this channel. So you had all of those cars that were just over the top, Hemi, Darts, Barracudas, but they were all race cars, right? They were all built specifically for competition. And then you had the muscle cars, the image cars, that were built for the public. And that really started in earnest with the GTO. The 64 GTO was the first image car. What? You were a little restless, right? We're making a video. This is what we do. The 64 GTO was the first image car. It sold like crazy, and everybody dove in afterwards. So you had copy after copy of that muscle car template. The sizzle to go with the steak. Well, AMC got involved a little at a time, hotter and hotter, as far as combinations go, a little more flash, a little more style. That whole human race thing kind of just went out the window. And then in 1969, they decided the race they wanted to get involved with was the street race. And the reason I say that the 69 Hurst Scrambler, the SC Rambler, and the SC stands for, calm down, I'm getting to the point. The SC stands for supercar, so SC/Rambler. It was a copy of what the people, what the guys who were building muscle, who would buy muscle cars, and start modifying them, because no muscle car stayed stock for long. It was what they were doing on the street. At AMC, instead of saying, well, we're just going to make another nice refined package, they said, no, let's copy exactly what the kids who are buying these cars and modifying them, let's do it right from the showroom floor. Calm down, sweetheart. Calm down. We got another 5 minutes of this. I'll hurry up, okay? So what they did was they took the Rambler Rogue, which was their 2-door hardtop, little compact hardtop, cute little car, lightweight. Even with the small V8 in it, it was still under 3,000 pounds. So they took the Rambler Rogue, and they did this in groups of 500 each. So there were 3 groups of 500, and there were a total of 1,512 cars sent to Hurst for this conversion to the SC Rambler. So not only did Hurst install the 390, which was the AMX motor, but they did a bunch of other things that would qualify it as day 2. So as I was saying, day 1 is the way the car comes off the showroom floor. And this is, we're talking about in modern terms. Day 1 and day 2 weren't in use back then. But in terms of what we relate to today, day 1 is the way the car came off the assembly line and ended up at the dealership. Day 1. Day 2 is after the car was bought and the owner decided to personalize a little bit. So he put headers on it, glass pack mufflers, they'd aftermarket wheels, scoops, springs, gauges, all of the stuff that you would do to hop the car up typically in the day. Well, Hurst did that to these Rambler Rogues with the 390s and created the Rambler Scrambler. So here's what makes this car unique. So, as I said, it wasn't just a typical conversion like Hurst was doing with the Oldsmobiles, the Hurst Olds, where they would take the 442, which wasn't available with anything bigger than a 400 off the assembly line, and drop in the 455s, and then add the scoop and the little doodads that made it the Hurst Olds. Well, they went after the street. They were looking for street cred with this thing. So the car got the calm down, sweetheart. Winnie, just a couple of minutes. Just a couple of minutes, so we'll go play. So this is hard to do. The car got the 390 with a Borg-Warner T10 trans, Hurst shifter, a Hurst Competition Plus shifter with a T-handle. Everybody else was using little balls and variations of that. Well, these things got an actual T-handle on them. Other cars, gauges, right? So for instance, on the Rambler Scrambler, on other cars, they would either put the gauge, like a tack. You need a tack on a muscle car, right? All right. So they would put the tack in the gauge cluster. If there was no room in the gauge cluster, they would put it on a console. If you couldn't get it on a console for whatever reason, they'd mount it on the hood. They'd have a hood-mounted tack. Well, on the AMC Scrambler, they did what the kids in the street were doing, and they took a sun tack and they mounted it to the steering column with a hose clamp. It was actually held to the steering column with a hose clamp, the same way an 18-year-old kid would do with the tack that he bought at the speed shop and installed on a car himself. There were other features with this car. The scoop, the hood scoop on this thing was revolutionary. Didn't realize it was revolutionary at the time. It was just a really weird looking hood scoop. You know, it had that snorkel and it was kind of face down a little bit. But it was the forerunner. It was a very primitive snorkel scoop, which became the standard of the industry beginning around that period of time, 1970, 71, 72 in pro stock. The snorkel scoop puts the air inlet above the boundary layer. So it actually gives you a true ram air effect. And the snorkel scoop on this thing was vacuum operated. They used the same mechanism on this scoop as they did with the Oldsmobiles, the Ram Air Oldsmobiles. But they incorporated it into that. They put hood pins on it from the factory, which is something, I think this was the first car to actually get hood pins from the factory. Hey, calm down. We're getting there. I'm getting there. They put dual racing mirrors on it. They stole those from the Hurst Olds. And then here's a really neat thing, and this is like, you never hear people talk about this with these cars. Back in the day, the big thing was glass packs. Muscle cars from the factory were just far too quiet. So, calm down, baby. So people would guys would right away throw glass packs on their car, give it that sound. Well, the glass pack of choice of the day was the thrush muffler, the thrush can muffler. And you guys, you old timers, you know the one I'm talking about. It's round, it's got the riveted body, and it's got the picture of the bird on it and all. Well, AMC or Hurst, when they was converting these cars, added those mufflers. Only they didn't use a true glass pack because a glass pack wouldn't hold up as on a production car. The fiberglass blows out after a short period of time and it's just like a straight through pipe. So they used a chambered muffler, and it was later on it became known as the Hush Thrush. That's what was available over the counter. But that muffler was originally intended, it was really designed for the Hurst Scrambler, the SC Rambler application, so that when you looked at it from the side it looked like a standard, glass pack muffler, but it was actually a chambered muffler. And it had chrome tips. Here's a picture of the scoop and the air cleaner base, and it's sealed with foam. It was actually an effective scoop. It really did the job. Okay, sweetheart. Okay, she's getting restless. I got to get her outside in a minute. And then they got the engine. So from the factory, they were rated at, I think, 315 horsepower. But they had, AMC at the time had this thing called Group 19. So Group 19 parts, it was named Group 19 because it was the 19th section of the factory parts manual. Simple enough, right? Through Group 19, you could get So the car came with a cast iron intake manifold. Hang on, sweetheart. The car came with a cast iron intake manifold and a Carter AFB. But through the Group 19 parts, you can get an Edelbrock intake, the R4B, the Rambler 4-barrel, or you can get a cross ram. They actually had a cross ram set up. Now, if you bought this car, you go to the dealer, you order this car, and you tell them, well, you hit the Group 19 parts, you could leave the showroom, you could leave the dealership with this car with a cross ram and a pair of Holley carburetors on top of it. Doug Thorley headers, all factory options. Axle dual was a Mallory dual point distributor, camshafts, a whole range of camshafts. These things came with 354 short grip rears, or short grip was a Chrysler, they called it twin grip on AMCs. All right, sweetheart, she's really getting restless. I gotta hurry this up. You can get gear ratios. They came with 354 standard. You can get gear ratios all the way to 5.0s. Crazy, right? All from the factory. So you can buy this thing, and before it even sort of light of day, you can have a cross ram 5.0 geared terror. They advertise them as running 1430s. The 1430 came from an official road test, and it was the way the car was built. Okay, she's really getting us. I'm going to put her down, okay? Hang on. I'm just going to put her down and let her run around the floor. There you go, baby. Okay. So, don't be so cute. The 14.3 came from a road test. I forget which magazine did it, but it was in completely stock trim. Now at the time, 1969 was the first year that they had to start tuning for emissions purposes, so timing was a little retarded. Calibrations on the carburetor were a little on the lean side, not crazy like later on, but it was conservative. And it was conservative in that it was like those standard warranty tunes, so like anybody could drive this thing, right? Anywhere, anytime, and it'd be just fine. But with just a little bit of refinement, you're talking about a car that would run like 1380, 1370 right off the bat. Now 14.3, the 1430 on the road test for this thing was at 99 miles an hour, 99 and change. So it was a 100 mile an hour, quarter-mile car, just right off the bat. Building a 12-second factory scrambler was a piece of cake. So as I said, they built these things in 3 runs. Look, this one was a race car. Look at that. That is just gorgeous, right? Just gorgeous. They built these things in 3 runs of approximately 500 cars each. And the paint there was an A scheme and a B scheme. The A scheme is this one with the big red on the side. It had Magnum 500, so this one here has got Krager SS's. But from the factory it had Magnum 500s that were painted blue. It's the only instance of a painted Magnum 500 I can think of. But they had Magnum 500s painted blue, that big red stripe, and then a blue stripe that came down the center. And that was what they call the A scheme car. The B scheme car had much a lower stripe, so the whole side of the car wasn't red, just a little bit. And those graphics on the hood were missing too. And there's no real breakdown as to how many A scheme and B scheme cars there were, or what batches they were running. Because the problem with doing anything with AMC from a historical perspective is that really nobody kept records of these things. Nobody paid attention at the time. Like, you had Chrysler fanatics from day one. You had Pontiac guys that was their religion from day one, and every little thing was documented. But the AMCs were in such a minority at the time that the clubs and the groups and the historical parts of it didn't really transfer to the modern era the way the old ones do. So when you're looking into the AMC cars, it's like deciphering like mysteries from the distant past. And that's what it's like when you try to restore one of these things too. I would love to get involved in one of these cars, but that's, they're just so rare, so obscure, and the parts are just so impossible to find that we leave that to the people who are really, really dedicated to building these things. So I know I must have forgotten other things that I want to talk about in this video, but you get the general idea. They built 1,512 total, 3 groups of 500 each. Hurst did all of the conversions. And the car was marketed at this street race. It was an actual day 2 car. It was as close to a factory street machine, not a muscle car, but a street machine, as anybody had built to that time. A lot of the same things that were incorporated in this car found their way into regular production cars later on in 70 and 71. But the 69 Scrambler It was marketed at really, tire smoking teenagers. This is, the hose clamp steering column to me says everything. The next year, they went to the Rambler, the Rebel Machine, which is another one very similar to the Rambler Scrambler, but it's a much more refined car. It's more of a traditional muscle car, even with the red, white, and blue and all the other stuff that they had. The Rambler Scrambler, there may have been faster cars. Definitely were faster cars. There were definitely more exotic cars. There were definitely rarer cars. But there's nothing more unique in the world of traditional American muscle cars than the '69 Rambler Scrambler. All right, I hope you got something out of that. I'm going to take her out for a walk. I'll see you tomorrow.